Hi, welcome back to Trust Issues, the series where we dive into the toughest challenges facing privacy and security leaders today. For leaders at global companies, there's a constant battle. On one hand, you have a complex web of privacy regulations like GDPR, and on the other, you have the personal, ever-changing consent preferences of your actual customers. So which one is more important? And how do you navigate when they conflict? I put this challenge to Microsoft's Kevin Magee, and he explained that the old model of relying on a 40,000-word terms and conditions page is totally broken, and that modern trust is built on a clear, defensible stance on data. This is a look at the future of consent. Let's hear from Kevin.
Interesting, because we've just gone through a 10-year period of heightened regulation, the European Union adopting some very stringent regulation across a lot of industries. But in the Americas now we see a deregulation. So we've got sort of bumps throughout the world on regulation. And I think that's a big challenge, as organizations now can't really just, be local. They need to be global. So how do they manage those regulations and compliance across multi-jurisdictions? So there's going to be a huge opportunity within entrepreneurship to come up with solutions and using AI to automate that. But the other thing that combined with that is, while the regulations might be different by jurisdiction, so might consumer preference. A consumer in Germany might think about, engaging with your brand very differently than someone in Canada versus someone in the US versus someone in the UK. And there may be similarities. So the complexities get very difficult, because what if the regulations are different, but also the consumer preferences within those organizations are different? I think it's marrying, how we deal with compliance, but also how we deal with consumer consent. And that could be patient consent, that can be citizen consent to engage with you as your organization and your brand as well too. It was never really on my radar until I sort of met Transcend and had a discussion about that consent management, and really started to think about, how many consent decisions do I as a human being engage with in a day? So I started counting on a little notepad next to me every time I made a consent decision. But then it's not even clear, if I go to a website, am I consenting? What am I consenting to? And if I order something from an online vendor, what am I consenting to? How many parties are part of that transaction? Because there's someone processing it, there's someone shipping it, there's someone distributing it. It's exponential now. So how do I think as an individual about that and managing that consent? Well, I wasn't really, till it was brought to my attention that that's something I should be thinking about. How then do you, as a company managing multiple jurisdictions, worry about not just compliance, which is pretty cut and dry, like you're either compliant or you're not. And I'm not a lawyer, so don't take any legal advice from me in that area, but consent is very different, and it's very personal, and it may change over time. My thoughts on how I want to engage with your brand may change because of some political aspect or some external focus as well too. So the level of complexity is changing astronomically. And if I think about how we're hyper-targeting individuals with marketing, we have now the tools with AI to do that. It becomes even more of a challenge as a consumer to understand really what you're consenting to when you engage with a brand. If I look at your website, did I consent to anything? I don't really know. And no one reads the terms and conditions. I think that's a ridiculous approach to say, if we clicked on the 40,000 word terms and conditions. I think the brands that are succeeding have a clear, understandable, we will not use your data. And they stick to it, and they not only demonstrate that in how they design their products, how they interact with you as a consumer of their products, but also in how they defend you and your rights in different jurisdictions against maybe governments or other organizations that will try and impede on those privacy rights as well too. So that's the kind of things that I look for in a brand now is ultimately, do they have an opinion? Do they do what they say they're going to do? And then are they willing to defend it? Or do they sort of fold at the first sign of opposition from a government that may want to intervene, that maybe isn't my government even? So these are tough challenges, but not all consumers are really thinking to that depth. And I often wonder if the accumulated consent over the lifetime of my children, what have they consented to in terms of working with a brand that's been around for their entire lifetime? And what information does that brand have about them? And what have they collected? It's just a massive thought exercise to even consider that, let alone how do we manage that as a business.